Okay, so here's the deal. Chris and I get DM'd crazy questions all the time, and we thought it would be fun to answer them in this special Q&A podcast. We're going to be covering things like sex, weed, relationships, how to start your own business, how to create your own oracle deck, my favorite tarot card, literally all the things. Let's dive in. Hey, we're Brit and Chris Carmichael, and you're listening to the Elevated Life podcast. Throughout the 13 years we've been together, we've never ceased in our endless quest to better ourselves.
We've studied top experts, philosophers, and gurus. After years of personal self-experimentation, we found the tools for shifting your beliefs, moving through fears, and developing a positive mindset.
If you're ready for a breakthrough, then you're in the right place, because we're here to empower you to take control of your life with simple mindset shifts that create radical transformation.
We'll be diving into topics like personal growth, health, philosophy, spirituality, relationships, success, and mindfulness.
So create some space for yourself and get comfy. It's time to become the badass you were born to be. So we recently made a post inside the Elevated Life Membership Club Facebook community asking all of our elevators what they wanted to know and hear on the podcast. And so we're going to dive in with something burning hot from Vicky. Sex, sex, sex. And literally she put the fire emoji. She says she wants to know tips for increasing sex drive and connecting emotionally during sex.
You know, there's so much you can do with sex, and you have to remember that no matter what you're wanting to accomplish or what kind of goal that you have to be thinking about it. It has to be at the top of your mind. It has to be in your conversation. It has to be in the books that you read. It has to be in the people that you speak to. It has to be everywhere. You have to be thinking about it. In order for your brain to give you something, it has to be a thought first. Everything that we see is literally someone's fantasy. It literally was something that was in someone's mind that came about. So if you're wanting more sex, you have to be thinking about that. And then you have to think, how does my partner need that communicated to them in a way that pleases me the way that I like to be pleased?
I think for increasing sex drive, you have to find what turns you on, what lights your fire, what brings you that, and if it hasn't happened for a while, that's your opportunity to explore and start to figure out, like, what do I need? And maybe that's the question you haven't been asking. What do I need in order to really feel connected with my partner? Maybe you haven't had those vulnerable communications or conversations with your partner saying, like, I really like this, or I want more of that, or I feel this way when this happens. That happened for us early on in the relationship. And I think that having the communication and actually the conversation with you where, like, I feel a certain way when things like this happen, and it was old programming that was creating this like block and barrier between us because of old ways that I felt about myself, and I didn't realize that was cutting off the intimacy.
Yeah, and the other thing to realize is that not everyone likes the same thing. Some people like gentle caresses, some people like to be choked. I mean, it's going to be different.
And some people like me who like all the things at different times.
Yeah.
So you never know.
So some people are super confusing, and it's just going to be a motley crew of what ends up happening. You just get out your magic 8-ball, shake it a few times, and that's what you want to roll with. But it's really important to also remember that oftentimes sex is something done to a conclusion. It's something that we try to get through really fast because we want the end part that's going to be really good. And the reality is that's not the best part. That for most of us is extremely short-lived. It completely tanks us afterwards. We seem emotionally distant for a few days. The real joy becomes in learning to pleasure your partner. And if you can derive pleasure from that, and they do the same back to you, you're talking a whole new ball game. And so the intimacy in the sex doesn't end. Instead, what it does is it builds. And once you build a strong enough bond that way, what you can do in the other parts of your life becomes really powerful. Because mostly the biggest block that we all have is sexually. It's difficult for us to talk about our fantasies. It's difficult for us to really open up about that. And that's why it's such an important part, because when we can focus on that and we can be really honest about that, and we can have discussions with our partners about what we really do like and how can we please them, now you can talk about all the other things in your life, the other parts that hold you back, and the parts that you really need to be honest on so that you can make your relationship something incredible.
I also think, if you're asking how to emotionally connect during sex, I think the emotional connection happens before you engage in the actual act of sex. I think it starts with those intimate conversations, and I think it starts with you getting clear with what you need, what you want, and vice versa. What does your partner need and want? And I think that's how you connect emotionally, and then the sex is more magical because you both are coming from a place of love and nurturing and wanting to give and not just get off.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you saying is that sex is not a one-time event. It's not just one little physical act. It starts in the morning and the way
sex starts with the dishes being washed, baby.
It really begins when you wake up in the morning and the way you treat each other in those first few minutes. You know, when you see each other, it's what happens when you come home from work. It's, do you stop in the middle of the day at lunchtime and message your partner and just say, "Hey, I was thinking about you."
Oh my God, you're so cute.
Those things. It's
I
those
love when
things
you do that.
over and over and over again that it is the sex. It's not just the part where you're laying in bed. It's the part all day long. And so when you have that kind of connection, when you have that kind of intimacy, the sex kind of takes care of itself because you're really excited to be with each other. Because when you have something for a long time, or when you're with something, the shininess wears off. I mean, it just does. I mean, if you've had the same car for a long time, it's gotten old, and I don't care what you drive. If there's a Lamborghini in your garage, it's just a Lamborghini now. And so when you're looking at your partner, you have to know that you need to infuse them with passion and drive. You have to arouse and excite them. And a lot of sex is about a mental game. The physical touch, really, once you get the mental game down, and once you know what moves your partner and what excites them, once they figure it out and that been able to tell you, I mean, you can do, I mean, this could be a whole topic.
And try new things. Well, we have a whole topic in the Elevated Life Club on intimacy and sex and healing through those blocks. So girl, I know you're in the club. Go check out that masterclass just for a refresh. This is such a powerful topic because, hey, who doesn't want to engage in life's pleasure and connect with their partner through this? It's like that number one topic that is taboo that nobody talks about.
But it's so funny because when you look down and when it boils down to it, that's the reason so many of us exist. Someone was interested in sex.
No, not so many of us. Oh, freaking all of us, bro. Like the flowers, the bees, the people. Like it's sex. It's sex and sex and sex. Literally, that's when I was copying all these questions over to this page so that we could, answer all the things. I was like, oh, well, that's what we're starting with. I'm just going in order with the way that they showed up, and we're starting with sex. So I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, and the last thing to talk about is sex also, in your sex drive, changes with age. And it also changes with your health. And so if you don't have like a regular health routine, or your diet's super crappy, or you drink a ton, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder to get there, especially if you're a guy. And two, don't, like I said before, like don't chase after the orgasm. Like don't, especially if you're male, like don't constantly just chase after the orgasm. The building up the intimacy is the most important part, because if you're chasing after that and you're wondering why the sex doesn't last very long, it's because you've been chasing after that like 1 or 2 minute pleasure for too long. You need to get back to just enjoying your partner and having some time where you spend not doing that. Don't do it for a few days. Don't do it for a weekend. Stretch it out. Don't do it for a week, and just be with them and enjoy holding them and kissing them. Change everything.
I love that so much. All right, Haley wants to know, there's an event that her husband and her are invited to. On a scale of 7 or above, which we all know our famous 7 or above rule, and if you don't, it's on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being awful, 10 being amazing. We only allow ourselves to do things that are a 7 or above because we have that freedom of choice. If you want to know more about it, join us in the club. But she wants to know, on a scale of 7 or above, she's at a 4 and he's at an 8. It would be awkward for him to go without her, so how do they come to a decision?
Well, normally on something like this, and this happens for us a lot, because Brit is always wanting to do events. She's infinitely more social, infinitely more social than I will ever aspire to be. But and it brings a lot of fun to our life. We obviously meet a lot of people that way and go places. But I'm more like the hermit. But so she's always want to do stuff like that. So this happens a ton.
Chris is always a 1.
That's not, that might be true.
We average it out. 1 plus a 10 is not over a 7.
But the reality is that I do enjoy going to a lot of places, and I do enjoy the people that I'll meet there, even if the subject to me is not that interesting, because you can bring the fun yourself. Like you can be the person that shows up, and sometimes you just have to be there for your partner, and you got to take one for the team. I mean, if you're in a long-term relationship, you're going to take one for the team a lot. It's going to happen on a weekly basis. It could be happening on a daily basis. You just have to show up and do that sometimes. I'm not talking about you make yourself miserable and do a bunch of things you don't want to do all the time, but you got to be there. You got to be there for your partner. And so for me, a lot of times I'll end up saying yes after I'm probably like, gosh, I don't want to do that. but I'll end up saying yes and then go and have a blast. It's not like if I do say yes, I'm not going to show up and be a bump on a log. I'm not just going to be in that guy in the corner that's sobbing and like, whoa, it's just so bad.
I don't want to be here.
Yeah, like that.
I'd rather be watching sports.
I would not, that's not something that's going to even enter my mind. I'm not going to let any of those thoughts be entertained because they don't have a place in my life and they definitely don't have a place in my relationship. And when I do go and show up, I'm always showing up as like whatever I can bring to the table. And even if I am sitting off in the corner reading a book, but like it's
90% of the time.
But it's only because I want to be there for her. There's going to be parts. She just likes me being there. I drive Brit everywhere. Brit doesn't really drive. And so it's I'm going to be there and show up. And in the second that anyone needs me, I'm showing up at a 10. I'm showing up just being full me.
Oh, that's so true. I think depending on the situation, everything in life, you really have to evaluate from multiple perspectives. And in this case, there's not enough context to say, well, fuck it, just stay home if he's an 8 and you're a 4. Like, it sounds like it's a probably important event, which is like why he wants you to go. But if it's not an important event and like, whatever, like just forget it. If it's, or it's a family reunion, because it would be awkward if she didn't show up. I mean, it really depends on the context, honestly. That's so true in life. One thing could be good in one case, but in the next case it could be absolutely not good. So
and you definitely want to tell your partner where you're at. Like,
I think just communicate.
It's not about just saying yes because they're asking you to do something. They need to know that you're at a 4. Like, hey, I'm just gonna put out here,
but you owe me later.
Like, this doesn't excite me a lot. We can work on some compromises. Like that's where I would come from. But
listen, they're easy to please. Okay.
All right, so Michelle asks, what is your favorite card from the Tarot and why?
Ooh, first card that comes to mind is number 17, the Star from the Major Arcana.
Oh boy.
Well, now I didn't even think about this until you said, oh boy, but I have my first tattoo with stars on my feet. Like, I had this very specific constellation of stars that needed to get tattooed on my 18th birthday. And so it makes sense, man. But the reason why I love the Star card, because it stands for hope, inspiration, renewal, confidence, and the ability to kind of walk between both worlds, being a channel from, higher realms of spiritual wisdom and inspiration, and to be able to give that back to the earth. And I just really identify with that card. Many years ago, I wrote down on a piece of paper, I want to be an inspirational leader. I did not know what it really meant when that came through me, because it was clearly like a soul calling that I had to work my way up to accepting, even though it was there. Like, what is this? Why is this coming through?
You know what? That reminds me, like, when you have this big mission in life, or when you ask for a big mission, a lot of times it's not someone that's going to come drop it off to you. It's going to be the fact that you have to change to acquire it.
Oh, so true. And that was me. Like, it was an acceptance of like, okay, I guess I am supposed to show up as this like inspiration and share my story and show people that no matter where you come from or how bad it is, you have the power to choose to change. Like, I thought the Wizard of Oz did that for everyone else, but it clicked for me. So now I want to pass that on with my sparkly shoes. And that's why I'm all about the sparkle magic.
It's funny because since you pull cards, or you pull cards every morning, and I'm always in a different room. When you get the Star card, I always know it. Because you always,
like my birthday.
You always yell out at me, "Hey, guess what card I got?" I automatically know it. It's either
that or the Lovers.
The Lovers, or possibly the Empress.
Ooh, okay, so that was the other one that I was like, it's either the Star or the Empress. But what I can tell you about both is that they're both feminine energy of growth and renewal and abundance and connection and creativity, most importantly. And so I think I like them both. But I will say, here's my little bonus question that most people wouldn't know to ask. So you have what's called an indicator card in Tarot when you start reading. You basically want to pick the card in the deck that most represents who you are, and like what your personality is, like what card are you drawn to. And oddly enough, I didn't pick any of the major arcana stuff. The thing that stood out to me at the time was the Queen of Wands, also a woman of magic and inspiration and creativity. So it really stood out to me, and it's funny, all three of them there's a theme here. So I love that question because I love reading Tarot and teaching Tarot, and I would have never in a million years thought that would be a part of my daily life and practice.
Yeah, there's me thinking about this, even though I don't pull cards, regularly. Just the artwork in them, the symbolism, and there's so much beauty in it, and it's interesting once you realize it's a system. It's not just like it's not put on there by accident. The artist didn't just make it up. It's all about all the little intricacies and everything.
Oh my gosh, so good. That actually makes me think of another question that was asked. I'm cheating. I'm skipping ahead to this question because it just seems so perfect to go together. Yeah, Michelle asks, what advice would you give to someone wanting to begin their own woo-woo online business and if they wanted to create their own deck? Ooh, I would say consistency in your own practice is going to be the thing that gives you the confidence to be able to go out and share it with the world. I think that's like not the here's step one of starting your online business, go live. It's really about the inner work that you have to do to be able to show up and be that source of inspiration. So if you want to start your own woo-woo online business, you have to get really clear on what it is that you offer and who you're going to offer it to. I think in general, that's going to be the best advice to start with, because that's the question that I struggled with in the beginning. I was like, well, who am I if I'm not just a hairdresser? Who am I supposed to help? And that took years of practice and trial and error to figure out who is that person and what are my unique talents and skills.
The other thing that I see happen a lot is that you need to start charging immediately. Charging. One of the big issues that woo-woo people end up running into is that they don't realize, one, the energetic exchange is going to happen. They do not realize how many people are going to come find you and take a lot of your time. I mean, that's what really happens. A lot of your time gets eaten by people with issues, especially if you're good at what you do. And so you want to immediately begin to charge, because the worst part is if you're totally drained and you didn't make any money and now you're too white to go and do something else. And so realize that it's totally okay for you to charge for these kind of services. I mean, people are doing it all over the world. It's totally all right to charge with what you're good at, even if it's really heartfelt things. That's totally acceptable. I know I'm saying this a couple of times, but how big of an issue this is, I've more people run into this than anything else I've seen. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think so. Especially females in business, because they just want to help, and we love to help, and it comes so natural and easy. Like, why wouldn't we do it for free? But you'll find that won't pay your bills, and you'll be energetically drained because you've given away all of your sparkle magic and your energy to other people without getting that exchange.
Yeah, and what ends up happening, that's the saddest part, is you end up frustrated with yourself because it's not working, and you end up resenting the people that you're helping. And when you have those two things combined, it throws you into a downward spiral where you're going to have to use your techniques to dig yourself out. I mean, it can be really lonely and really sad sometimes in this, spiritual based online world. And it comes from not having the sort of the courage and the confidence to put a price tag on it. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't know what to charge. Just charge something. Just do something. And if you need a couple of testimonials in the beginning, go work with a few people for free, totally good,
in exchange for the testimonial.
In exchange for the testimonial. Right, in
Yeah.
exchange, say, hey, I would love to do this. This is my first time. Be really honest about it. There's no reason to beat around the bush. Say, hey, I'm doing this. I'm going to go for testimonials. I know this is going to really help you. Is that something that you'd be willing to do? And once you have the testimonials, you have the proof now that lets people know, hey, I'm legit. We can do this.
Yeah, so she also wants to know, how would you create your own oracle deck? There's a lot of decisions to be made, but I would say in general, figure out the theme. Everyone get clarity on the theme. So what's the theme of the deck that you want to create? Then take time to write out what's going to be on the cards. I'm not asking you to write the guidebook right away. I actually think it's better to write, in my opinion, to write it towards the end so that you have more of an idea of the whole deck coming together. So I would say figure out what's the theme of the cards. Start writing that out, start getting it out onto paper. Don't keep it in your head, because so many people keep it in their head and wait for the full picture, and it doesn't work that way. So start writing it down. And then if you're going to be the artist, or if you're going to hire an artist, I think that is another decision you're going to have to make. And if you're going to hire someone, start looking immediately. I found my artist through Instagram, just looking up hashtags for like hashtag artist, illustrator, watercolor, just looking for different things. And it took time. It took about a year of me putting it out to the universe, me coming up with the ideas, what's going to be my theme. And, I pulled all the lessons from Shine School about self-love and self-discovery, and that was my theme. So I knew I had a pretty core, solid theme. And for me, my challenge was finding someone to bring that theme to life in a way that I knew was beyond my own skills.
Yeah, and Brit mentioned it, but it's really important to remember to give yourself time. None of this stuff is going to happen overnight, and it takes way longer than you thought. I remember Britt was like, "Hey, we're gonna knock this out in a couple months," and it was like, "Hey, we're gonna knock this out in a year. Hey, we're gonna knock this out," and it got longer and longer because projects sometimes take longer, and sometimes the project deserves it, and there's no reason to beat yourself up about it. Plug away. I mean, just plug away every single day. When you're sitting in line waiting for something, when you're out and you have to wait for your order to come to you, you're thinking about it. You're going on walks, you're thinking about it, and you're coming home and putting some pen to paper, or hitting that keyboard a little bit, or whatever it is that you do, and getting something down. I mean, literally just moving an inch forward at a time is going to get you there, and it will get you there much faster than if you burn out. A lot of times what I see most people do is they get about 85% of the way there and stop, and they were so close to the finish line, but they just couldn't anymore. They went too hard too fast, and then it was too much. And so give yourself the time. Let yourself have plenty of space, and that goes for any project that you work on.
Yeah, and if you want to shortcut the process, find somebody who's done it before and ask them the questions. I've had many people book an hour reading with me just to ask me the business questions about starting an Oracle deck, because there's not a lot of information out there. I mean, I hear myself saying I need to make a course for this, obviously, but that's what I did. I reached out to other deck creators and was like, "Hey, how'd you do this? Did you, get an LLC? Did you get an ISBN? Did you get on Amazon?" Like, there's really a lot. There's a lot that goes into it, to be honest.
That's another part about being in the online world. One of the smartest things that you can do is to begin to network with people. And it doesn't mean you're going in there and immediately asking them questions and like take. The first thing you want to do is, be a person in their community. You're going in their Facebook groups and writing something.
Like share their creations, or
you're on their
support,
Instagram. Yeah. When they look at you, they ought to be thinking like, "Oh my gosh, this is my ally. They want to help me spread my message." Not like, "Hey, here's some person who wants to take all my customers and steal my business." Like, that's not what you're trying to put out there. So don't approach people with that kind of mentality. It's just like, "Hey, how can I support you in what you're doing? I love it. I'm super into it." And when you build relationships like that, people a lot of times want to help you, and you end up really getting what you originally wanted, which was how do I create this online world. So reach out to people. You'd be really surprised at how much some of the bigger names that you think of will talk to you in the DMs or emails, and maybe you just get their assistant, but hey, that's one person. Go out and reach out to 50 or 100 of them and begin those conversations, and you'd be surprised how much faster you get there once you're connected with the right people.
Yeah.
They just can leapfrog you. I mean, that's what happens.
I think so. That's why, that's why we love to coach, is to help people shortcut their journey. That's what the whole Elevated Life Club was created for, like group coaching, so that we could share all the things that we've researched and tested and tried in our own life with our own clients, and proven time and time again. And that's what leaders are there for, is to shortcut your path. So my advice is find someone who's done it and learn from them, because there were so many things along the way where I was like, what is this? I have to find out, like, I have to get registered. Did you know it's $125 for that barcode on the back of any booklet? Like, I didn't know that. Like, there's so many different like little legal things that you have to do.
And I feel like that's...
I've already been knocked off in the first year. Like, what do you do when that happens? Like, there's so much that went into it. I was halfway through, I'm like, y'all, I'm just like, come on, I'm just a hairdresser, spiritual coach here. I'm not like a product creator. Like, I've never created a physical product before. So for me, I had to like, okay, I'm a newbie. I don't know what I'm doing, but I can learn it. And so I had to take a totally different approach. Obviously not to the creation of the deck or the wisdom behind the deck, but the physical actual creation of that kind of is confusing, but like the physical like making of the deck. Like, you have to download templates to make the right guidebook on the right thing. Like, when we've got the test round, the first test batch, like everything was off-centered, and like, well, what is that about? Like, so many little details.
and I feel like those are the parts where you can easily get too hung up for too long and wait. The biggest killer in business is always time. You're always kind of racing against time. And what happens is you end up spending a lot of your precious energy on little tasks, and that's where like the kind of like the technical overwhelm where you can't figure out why is this email not working.
Let me tell you, let me be real, hashtag real talk. You will get frustrated. You will feel like giving up. I remember when I was writing card number 26, I don't even know what the hell the card is, but I was just like, I cannot do this. Like, this is going to take forever. I can't even believe, like, I even thought this was a good idea. Like, what did I just get myself into for the last 2 years? But I remember telling myself, like, one sentence at a time, just every day, sit down. And that's what I did. I really blocked out all the noise and distraction. And Chris was on board. He knew, like, the second I got home from the salon, it was sitting down at my computer and cutting out all the nonsense and all the DMs and all the stuff, and just writing. And that, for me, like, got it done, just one step at a time. But I definitely wanted to give up along the way.
Yeah, you definitely have to be
So if you have my deck, thank you for believing in me, because I wanted to give up.
And I bet that comes as a surprise, because
totally,
because everyone always makes it seem like it's easy. Like, hey, this is just a joke.
Oh, that was so easy for her. Like, no, I cried over those cards. Okay. My tears are in those booklets.
and it's important to let your partner know, or to tell them, like, hey, I'm going to be taking on a really big project, and this is going to take me quite a bit of time, but it's something I'm really passionate about, and I know it's going to reach the right people, and it's going to touch them in the way that they need it, and it's going to make a really big difference in the world, to get them on board. You need to have your partner or your kids or whoever's around you to be on board about everything. Because if they're not, it's going to be a struggle. Because if you've ever been around entrepreneurs, they work. Like, they work a lot too. It's not just I think everyone thinks we sit on laptops at the beach and that's the only thing that we do, but there's a lot of grinding that happens that no one ever gets to see, because you just see the content once it's produced, and a lot of times it's pretty and the graphics look fantastic, but that's the 50th iteration.
I was gonna say, it took 50 times to get it perfect.
And this changed the font. What do I pick for this color? And everything. There's so many little bitty decisions, but that's the beauty of it. You're actually creating something that's new. You're creating something that is going to make a difference, and you have to let that continuously inspire you, because if you don't, it won't get out. It's a lot more work than you think it is.
Yeah, and speaking of that work, I leaned on my why so many times through that process. Anytime I got frustrated or had to learn something new, or it wasn't working, or my Amazon account got suspended before it even got open for 3 months for just BS, like, there were so many times where I was like, ugh. Like, okay, why am I doing this? I'm doing this to empower people. I'm doing this to help them commit to their self-care. I'm doing this to help them build their intuition and connect to their soul. Like, this is a bigger mission than me getting frustrated at Amazon. You know what I mean? So, I could talk about that forever.
Yeah.
Ooh,
all right. So
okay.
Let's move on. So Courtney asks, if you had to pick only one message or a piece of advice to give, what would it be? This reminds me of the billboard question.
Be yourself.
Be yourself. Well, that was mine to you.
Oh, well, I swiped it, and it's just like, I had to think about it for myself. Like, what is that message? Like, peace, like, be yourself and find your inner peace.
Yeah.
So I think inner peace, wherever it is that you need to look within yourself to be able to find that balance of peace, that's it. Like, that's my advice.
Yeah, and I think for me, the advice would be just relax. Kick up your feet for a moment. Just enjoy the ride. I find that this ride is going to be short. It's a short ride. We're not getting here for thousands and thousands of years. It's infinitely too short, and I realize that more often than I want to now. And oftentimes we worry and we get really frustrated about things that don't really matter. And it's easy to do that in the moment because you're focused on something and something's distracting you, and there's a little interruption, but there are some really precious moments that we have with people and the scenery around us, and we need to take a pause in our lives. Oftentimes we're just too busy. We're too busy, we're too stressed, we're too anxious to just enjoy things. And I think we forget.
Relax and enjoy, relax and enjoy.
Relax and enjoy.
We say that a lot.
That would definitely be my biggest, just relax. Just calm down a little bit. You're going to be okay. Just take a few deep breaths. This is what I do with my clients all the time. This is why I'm so passionate about what I do, because what I've noticed is that achievement and drive comes in, and motivation and all those things come at a really thick price. And the price that you pay is that you stay on for too long. And oftentimes what you really need is to just take a break for a moment, take a weekend, don't go party, don't go crazy, just be by yourself. That's why meditation and mindfulness are such important practices for us to do, because if we don't, we end up really missing life. I mean, if you're lost in your to-do list, did you even live? Or did you just go from hop tasks all day long? And then you get to the end of the day and you wake up in the morning, you're gonna hop tasks again. Like we're not just task robots. This is meant to be enjoyed too, meant to have those moments, meant to hug each other. So start relaxing, start enjoying.
Oh, are you getting emotional?
Yeah, I get fired up. I think about people,
Yeah, I feel like I want to give you a little
Aw.
hug, baby. So cute. All right, Brandy wants to know, what is the one thing you wish you could have said or done to or with someone?
I think probably it took me a lot of years to appreciate people. And you realize that, when you think about your parents, you think about like, they didn't necessarily know what they were doing. When I think about myself in my 20s, no shot. No way.
It took me 30 years and a mushroom trip to call mom and say, oh my God, thank you for everything. Hey, and if you're looking for that experience, guess what's topics coming up in the Elevated Life Club? Psychedelics.
Oh my gosh, yes. Being able to talk about microdosing and where psychedelics are going to take us and what that trip's going to be like. But it's true that a lot of that stemmed from that trip that we had. I just didn't realize that I took opportunities and myself and my family and my friends for granted. I just took them all for granted because they'd always been there, and hey, look, I'm doing my own thing, and who cares about you guys? And they're the ones that definitely brought me here. And so my big thing would just be to tell people that they've mattered, that they've meant something.
I was just thinking I would go back to my younger self and tell her that she's safe and loved, and it's okay to be different. It's okay to be weird. I would have given her the love that she thought was outside of herself and reminded her how freaking amazing and incredible she is and will be and continue to be. So I think I'd go back to my own self because, and I'm sure there's cases and scenarios in which other people would want to, like, oh, well, if you lost your dad or this,
yes.
I think about my biological dad, like, shit, I'm not, now as an adult, I'd love to go back and have conversations with him, like, that I wasn't even interested in having as a teenager or, when he started trying to come around. So, I think I'd go back to myself. Tell her you're loved and freaking amazing. Okay, so this Q&A has turned into a really long conversation, and we've decided to break it up into 2 parts. So be sure to stay tuned for next week, and we'll be sharing part 2. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Elevated Life Podcast. Want more? Join us at theelevatedlifeclub.com for mindset upgrades, lifestyle hacks, and spiritual tools to elevate your soul.
Each month features a new masterclass, meditation, yoga practice, and more to help you transform your life one step at a time.
Come join the 7 or Above Club.